The concept of a flipped classroom, using class time in a different way, has generated a lot of attention. These are my comments intended to help you decide if this approach is right for you. The word flip implies that things once completed outside of class should be done in class, and what is done in class can be moved to another time and place. Learning in most situations involves some combination of learning in a setting in which the learner is in direct contact with an instructor, and other settings in which this is not the case. Students work in school, in study hall, or in the library. Students may also work at home. A fundamental of a flipped approach is that some activities would be more productive if executed in a different setting. Before we evaluate what might best be accomplished where, it would make sense to attempt to identify what must be accomplished. In our discussion of instructional experiences from Chapter 4, we identify 4 components of instruction based on a simple model proposed by Alessi and Trollip in 2001. You can check our reference list for the citation. The Alessi and Trollip model argues that learning typically involves an exposure to new information or new experiences, initial teacher guidance as students work to understand the information presented or learn to execute the skill, extended practice to assure retention or develop fluency, and assessment to evaluate success and determine if more work is necessary. We explain what each of these components of instruction involve in greater detail in the book. These individual tasks can be accomplished in a wide variety of ways, but you should be able to recognize each in most successful learning scenarios. Our point here is that it may be useful to use these components to analyze what happens during what might be described as class time and what happens at other times. Then, how might this distribution be altered in a flipped classroom, and how would this new arrangement be more productive? What advantages might flipping the classroom generate? The advantages we propose are not necessarily proven, but represent our efforts to identify possible benefits. We assume many of these proposals could be tested, but do not know that relevant data exists at this point. The first advantage that occurs to us is that a reorganization of when the components of instruction occur could increase the total amount of time devoted to learning. Class time, the time in which the teacher and students are in a designated place devoted to their interaction, is relatively fixed. Moving an activity from this fixed time slot and making it the responsibility of the students to complete at another time increases the time devoted to learning by the amount of class time saved by this adjustment. Assumptions associated with this advantage would be that students will spend the additional amount of time required by the activity, and that the activity can be completed with similar or even greater success outside of class. A second advantage that occurs to us is that of flexibility. By moving activities in and out of what we describe as class time, flexibility in accommodating individual needs may be improved. We see flexibility being improved in a couple of ways. First, an activity now requiring a common approach could be accomplished in a more flexible manner if moved. Second, increasing the time available within the fixed time environment, class time, would allow greater flexibility for what is done in that setting. Of course, increasing the flexibility of class time requires that an activity normally occurring during that time period be moved elsewhere. Here is one way to conceptualize flipping the classroom. You have a classroom and you have other locations. We represent this here as a school and the home, but this is a bit deceptive, actually a little simplified. Activities moved out of the classroom are also completed in other locations. One way to think about what happens is to ask what components of instruction are prioritized in which location. In most traditional arrangements, presentation, guidance, and probably assessment are completed during class time, and teachers make assignments of practice that are to be completed as homework, either at home or in study hall. The most common activity adjustments made in flipping the classroom appear to be moving presentations made by the teacher to all students out of the classroom and using the free time made available to assist individual students, the guidance component. Presentations made to all students are typically recorded as video and offered online, or in some cases using a medium such as a CD. Flexibility in the use of the presentation is often addressed by breaking the presentation into shorter segments. The assumption is that students can replay individual segments that are more challenging for them, individualizing the presentation in a way that would not be possible in a large group. This extending processing of the presentation segments may also be understood as improving the guidance phase. By removing major blocks of presentation from class time, the teacher now has the opportunity to use face-to-face time to respond to the needs of individual students. This expands the time devoted to guidance. It should be recognized that there is no official model for flipping the classroom, and that modifications other than those mentioned here are possible. For example, the content of the Khan Academy website is often used. The short video segments provided by the Khan Academy are sometimes used to supplement classroom presentation. This, in essence, offers guidance outside of the classroom through video segments. The web resources also include problem sets. These allow a form of formative assessment, identifying learning gaps that students need to address. We hope this analysis has offered an even-handed perspective on the concept of the flipped classroom. Our approach was intended to offer you a way to think about changes this approach might encourage, and to offer a way to think about benefits and related assumptions. The proposal that educators flip their classrooms has received a lot of attention. At first, as a college instructor, it was not obvious to me that I had any experience with this approach. Then it occurred to me that I had been committed to at least a version of the flipped classroom at the graduate level for years. Because my graduate course is taken simultaneously by on-campus and online students, and because online students often cannot connect at the assigned time for class, I have to both record my class for those unable to participate synchronously, and I have to create content for all to review before class begins. My class is thus technically flipped, but my motives have been based more on practical issues than the analysis of the advantages and disadvantages of spending face-to-face time in any particular way. I like to offer comments on instructional practices that are at least partially grounded in a review of research findings. I have searched Google Scholar, and I find that I cannot provide such a perspective here. There simply isn't that much to report. What I will attempt to offer are some thoughts designed to get you to think carefully about just what might be accomplished by using class time to focus on different activities than is now typically the case.